Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the KickABall podcast. I'm your host today, Danny Lang, and today we have a very special guest, one of the star defenders. Well, defenders is a stretch of a word. I never like using defender, midfield, forward, but right back, right center back, Reid Valentine of Texoma FC. How are you doing today, my man?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Good, of course, bro. I mean, you've been one of the strongholds, I think, on this Texoma team in an expansion year for a club that's fighting for the playoff positioning. I mean, we're
Yeah.
looking at the last the not home stretch, but the last stretch of these matches throughout the rest of
Yeah.
the season. Give us a bit of a thoughts on how at home you felt with the team, what the last few matches have been like, and maybe the confidence that this locker room has going into the rest of the season.
Yeah, of course we're confident. We have the players and the coaching staff to, be able to get into the playoffs. The past few games have been hard. We've been on the road a lot. We just played at Portland and they have like a great crowd. So, those games are challenging, but we have a few home games coming up. So, must wins and, we'll see what happens.
Huge. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's always big for the expansion sides to be able to go out and be able to hold their ground at home, but also there's a difficulty in, I mean, just that, it being an expansion side, going away and going out. Um, Now, when I talked about with you a little bit, we'll get into this a little bit later, but the fact that you're 19 years old playing at a professional level, a professional team in USL League One, where you, the way that this league is played, there's a lot of stress, at least on those center
Yeah.
backs, to be able to quell opportunities.
Mhm.
What can you tell us a little bit about just, not quite having that first season finished, but about as far as we could get in this point in
Yeah.
time, just being in that professional environment?
It's been great. I think I owe a lot of my personal success, to my teammates. A lot of the older guys have taken me under their wing, kind of, and given me good advice on being calm and enjoying it. You don't want to get lost in the pressure, like you said, that it's natural and coaching staff and everything. So just to enjoy it, take it a day at a time, and yeah, really just trying to have fun while you play. I know that's why everyone gets into the game, and you don't want to lose that enjoyment, and it takes the fun out of it. So I think that's important.
Right, completely agree. I think
Yeah.
even, I mean, like I said, I talk mostly with college athletes about this kind
Mhm.
of work, but it's still important to, I mean,
Yeah.
the guys that didn't need college should go sign the first shot, I'll say. But, a lot of these guys, because they're not playing for the wages or they're not, having those extensive periods where they're on away
Mhm.
trips or
Yeah.
having that fierce competition against someone maybe who's 32 or 33
Yeah.
competing for your spot. It makes it a little bit easier to have that enjoyment of the game, but I'm glad to hear that you still have that piece of it. I mean, it's
Yeah.
being your first season, you being in there so young and in a professional environment. Where does that mindset come from for you? Was it a particular coach or a support system, or was it something that was developed in Texoma?
Yeah, definitely my dad. My dad's played. He played growing up, and so just he's always been encouraging me and pushing me, just in soccer and in life. So I definitely say he was a big part, and I think it's just I have some of that just naturally. I guess I'd say,
Mhm.
just being able to work hard, keep your head down, and keep pushing forward. You don't want to. I feel like everyone on the team, of course, works hard. You have to work hard to make it, and you feel like if you take your foot off the gas for a few days, someone might be catching up. So just trying to stay at it, especially during the season. It's coming to an end, so we got to finish strong.
Completely. And
Yeah.
um, when you talk about keeping your head down and maintaining that work ethic, does the conversations about what kind of positions that you play in those locker rooms and with your coaches, does that come up often by, you naturally there's a difference between playing that outside back and being a center back. And
Mhm.
regardless of which one of them is your primary position or the one that you want to play more, you have to have that ability to play both because you never know, depending on what may happen 3 weeks from now between, let's say, Omaha or Westchester that you're
Mhm.
playing later in the match. You don't know
Yeah.
which side you're necessarily going to be playing, but you have to be ready for
Exactly.
both. How does
Mhm.
that, how has that work ethic that you've developed play into this season that you've had?
Um, I mean, I think a big role. I didn't. I'm a center back throughout my life. I've been
Mm.
and the whole right back thing kind of just happened due to some injuries we had. First game I played at right back was Madison away, and we drew 1-1. This was maybe 2 months into the season,
Right.
and I played well. And majority of the season I've played outside back. Uh, I mean, me and our coach Adrian had a talk middle of the season, and he just asked what I thought about playing right back. It was after that Madison game, and of course, you would love to play your natural position, but the most important thing is, especially as a young guy, it's hard to move those older guys, out of the position.
Sure.
So if you can just get on the field, it's the most important. So that's what I told him. I said, anywhere you're comfortable with playing me, I'm happy to be there. And so yeah, I've been kind of learning on the fly, playing right back. I played some growing up, maybe 15. I used to play for the Dallas Texans, a club team in Dallas.
Right.
But yeah, it's I've enjoyed it. Yeah, it's fun. It's a different experience, but it's all good and part of your development. So
Yeah, good.
yeah,
And that's something that's something that's going to be vital for you. I mean, moving forward, the more that you're
yeah,
getting those reps between both positions, then you end up being that older guy who's got that experience,
exactly.
and
Yeah,
there's that expectation that maybe you'll be that center back, but you're not a bad outside
yeah,
back
no,
either, too. I mean,
yeah,
what I will say, I like how you're able to break those lines in terms of passes. You always seem to be someone who, it seems to be making the right option. What has that transition from right back been for you? And even with that Madison game, I believe that was the first point you guys had earned on the season
it
too.
was. Yeah, yeah, it was. Yeah, it's a very, I'd say center back's a lot more thought. You have to a lot more thinking on center back. Of course, you can't get beat, so it's a lot more trying to keep the game in front of you,
Mhm.
and a lot more just kind of dictating play. Yeah, outside back, I'd say it's a lot more testing on the body. You're playing against, in my opinion, the wingers on the other team are normally the best players. Um,
Mhm.
so especially in this league, it's a lot of good wingers, like accomplished wingers are in this league. So it's a lot of more testing physically, but less more just kind of go out and play versus trying to make sure you're making the right decision. So it's definitely different, but I like the all the constant 1v1s is a constant battle during the game, and I enjoy it. So
And we talked about this a bit earlier, but that's the state of where this league is. It's
yeah,
going to be just, I mean, you could hold the ball for 70% of the game, but
exactly.
you need to get those chances one on one.
Mhm.
And your wingers, their entire job is to beat someone like you to goal.
Exactly.
Um, you know, is that something that you've had any experience in training for? Again, and we keep saying this is your first pro season, but even
Yeah.
as you've been growing up, how do you make sure you're staying composed and that you're keeping your mindset right, knowing that you may have won a battle between a winger, but he's going to come back full force for the rest of the 90 minutes that you've got left?
Exactly. Um, it's definitely something different. Of course, the players that I'm playing with now are much better than the players I've played against and played with growing up. So it feels like, in this league, especially as a defender, you win 9 out of 10 battles, but, if the winger wins one and scores, all the looks on you, the blame almost for the goals on you. So trying to just stay consistent, and just honestly, especially as an outside back, just listening to the center backs behind you, to the midfield behind you, because really most importantly as a defender, if you can just delay play, guys will get around, and affect the play, and you have really good players, especially for me, really good players around me. So if I can, just delay, don't technically have to win the ball. Just listen to the direction they're giving me. It's a big help.
Huge. I
Yeah,
mean, it's a great sentiment that you've been able to air, and it's a huge thing of being able to have those conversations with other people that are on your team, knowing what it's like on the offensive, and
yeah,
really learning what that's like. I'll give you an example I've seen with the college game. I mean, I know Christian Lamelli, one of my closest contacts in college ball, and he always tells me what had always gone through my mind is. Keepers will or goalkeeper coaches they'll work with their keepers, but they'll also work with their back lines and make sure the communication is all set.
yeah,
But CeeLo will work with the attacking players and the goalkeepers. And I asked him why, and he just says the same thing that you talked about, understanding the other side of a perspective
Mhm.
for the keeper, knowing what kinds of exposure that you're going to be seeing
Yeah.
from, I mean, certain attacking players, and it's paid dividends. I mean, it's produced a guy like JT Harms who's now in North Texas, and I know CeeLo also played professionally for a little while before he went into
Mhm.
coaching. So, yeah, no, I could say from the anecdotal experience on my end that it's interesting that you air the same sentiment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, if you don't mind me asking, I appreciate you giving us this side of the Texoma experience that you have, and I would love to get into it a little bit later, but I think
Mhm.
we've got to do justice to yourself and your story by showing our viewers, how you grew up in soccer and what your youth background looked like, really up until, normally for guys I'm talking to, it's normally a 12, 13-year journey from when they
Yeah.
first started playing youth, then being 25 years old. Um, you know, you're not even old enough to go walk into a bar legally, so it's a little bit of it's a shorter journey that you've had, but we've still got to do justice by you. Reed, where does your soccer story start?
You know, Dallas most of my life. I started, there used to be a club called Andromeda in Dallas. It got bought out by Solar. So I really started there. Led into the Texans, which I talked about earlier.
Hmm.
Hassan Nazari, who's the owner of the Texans, he's a big coach in Dallas. He was my coach, really good coach. We had some really good players on our team who have who accomplished pretty good stuff so far, and that was a definitely a challenging time for me. I think that's where I kind of learned that work ethic. Kind of get back to that question you talked about earlier. It was I didn't play much. I was probably 14, 15. But yeah, I didn't get much game time, and Hassan was a very stern coach, pretty hard on his players,
Mm.
and so just being able to keep going to training, and you're getting kind of kicked by the coach, and not playing is difficult for anyone at any level, but just being able to just keep working, especially a lot of hours on your own, away from the that's where I think the best players become what they become is what they do away, because everyone's training with their team. So if, what you're able to do on your own. But so Texans, and then I actually lived in Germany for a year and a half. I played with a team called the Talent Project. So it was like an American, it's like scouting system. So they'd scout about 18 guys, and you'd go over there and you'd have basically a bunch of like, I mean, there are matches, but you're not in the league. It's just purely to get trials for guys.
Well,
Um, so I was over there, and I had trials with Dusseldorf, Cologne, Bochum, um, first division team in Croatia, but just around Europe. And so I ended up coming back. I had some success in the trials, but I was only 16 at the time, and all that visa stuff, was a pain. So ended up coming back, played for Solar, and then yeah, I was fully planning on going to college till probably about 6 months before I was supposed to leave. We started thinking, maybe USL is a good route. One of my, good friends, his name is Matthew Corcoran. I don't know if you've heard of him, but
it
he
has,
was,
yes,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So we were on Texans together, and he had went to USL. He went to Birmingham Legion when he was, I think, 15, pretty
Mhm.
young, real young. And he just got sold to the MLS. So just seeing him and seeing, it's a can be successful going through USL. Working your way up. So I started thinking about that, and kind of got lucky with how Texoma, being close to Dallas, they had um, a combine. They had a
Mhm.
combine, and one of the owner's son played on a Solar team, and he watched me play before and was like, "Oh, that kid's good," and reached
Yeah.
out to my coach, have me come to the combine, and that's kind of how it all started.
Wow. Okay.
And
So
a
you
lot.
were one of the guys. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't mean to cut you off. I was
No,
gonna
no, there's
make
just a lot. I had a lot there. So
no. I wish I'd said this before, but however long or short the story is, I was
yeah,
gonna sit here and I was gonna take it in anyway. But I
yeah,
mean, I'm in shock that you were one of the guys that, I mean, through a relationship that brought you to that combine.
yeah.
you were one of the dudes that showed out in those regional areas. I mean, sometimes these professional clubs and even these semi-pro clubs in USL too, they look to gain all this local talent that's from
Mhm.
wherever that they're situated. But as more time comes through, they're just not quite able to field competitive teams for
Yeah,
whatever the reason is, and they start bringing people from everywhere else. And
of
I think you
course.
need a mix of that to be successful in this league. But I mean,
Mhm.
it's interesting to know that you were one of the guys, the local guys that came in and really
Yeah.
made it on that next level. Do you, um, what do you think was it about your trial and your time in front of Texoma that ultimately led to the signing? Because you were, I forget if you were one of the first guys, but you were a dude that was pretty early on in that process, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, honestly, the combine was good. Played well. Then Adrian talked to me after the combine. It was him, Ben Watson, who's one of the owners,
Yeah.
and Ben Clarvis, our assistant, and we were talking, and they were like, we're really interested, and I told them because I didn't know what the level was going to be like in USL One. Like, of
Mhm.
course, I knew it was going to be higher than college and higher than what I played before.
Mhm.
So, to be honest, I didn't know if I would be good enough. And so I told
Mhm.
them that a academy contract is kind of what I was looking for, because it's, fine line if you sign that pro contract and, forego going to college and you're not able to find game time. It's always hard to find that next contract. And,
Sure.
it's just a sticky situation to be in. So, I asked for that academy contract and going into preseason and during all of our preseason matches, I was under academy contract, and I got lucky, to be honest. The one of the starting center backs, Angelo Calfo, was injured during basically all of preseason, and so I was able to get some game time, kind of proving what I can do, proving myself. Uh, and after those preseason matches, and we're playing good teams. We played Austin FC. We played SMU. So a good, nice college battle there. But yeah, I proved to them, proved to myself that I would be good enough, and so I felt like I was confident to take that step and signing that first pro contract, and it's worked out. So I'm happy with that.
I mean, saying it's worked out, I think is definitely an understatement. I mean, you've been a mainstay on that right side really for a huge part of that season. It's a huge
Yeah,
testament to, the work ethic that you put in, but also the fact that you can compete at this level.
yeah. Thank you. Yeah, yeah, I appreciate it.
Of course. I mean, and I mean, there's first for I'll mention too, Ben Clarvis was actually an interview that we had on here, and
Oh, no way.
I, I'll say it out loud. I'm really appreciative of his time to be able to want to come on to talk to some 20-year-old kid. I mean, this was months ago. I think now I was probably your age when I interviewed Ben.
Wow.
But I mean, I'm very thankful for his time to be able to talk with us, and I mean,
Mm.
just seeing the fruits of an expansion team that he's been a part of for so long has been really sweet. But I mean, talk to me about learning under a guy like Adrian Forbes, a championship level player out in England with Norwich City and Luton Town, and the
Mm.
experience that he's gathered in playing, and now being able to have those conversations with guys like you. What has learning under him been like?
Yeah, it's been great. He's like you said, he has a ton of experience, and he has a lot of good things. I think one of my favorite aspects of him is I've had coaches in the past with kind of first impressions. They see what you do wrong and they continue to call it out. But
Mhm.
even when you fix it, they'll continue to call it out. I almost like to have like a stigma against you. And
Sure.
something I've loved with him, he's been big with me on just body shape and box defending. Not trying to have a facing the ball close hips, so you're able to see your guy. Uh, and he was on that for me for during a lot of preseason, and I've worked on it and gotten better at it, and I almost never hear that from him anymore. And I think he's, to be honest, a really good development coach. A great coach for the older guys, but for me personally, he makes sure to you don't want to feel like you're kind of an outcast as a player.
Right.
Seeing kind of the saying is like if the coach never talks to you, if the coach is never getting on to you, it's almost a bad thing because it feels like he's almost given up on you. And I think it's important for for players, and he does a good job with keeping you engaged and come and talk to you one on one, every week or so, just to kind of let you know how he thinks you're doing and give you his insight. So it's been great. He's been a great coach.
Huge, huge. Yeah, I mean, and that's what you need coming into an expansion team with a completely new set of roster of guys
Yeah.
that have never played together. And not that that's something that can be an inhibitor, but
Mhm.
it's a strength that you guys have because there's nothing to go off of really for many of you in
Yeah, yeah.
terms of these certain situations. I mean, Solomon Asante is a dude who came in and he was I mean, I think he was a former Indy 11 guy. If I've got it, I know there's
Yeah.
a blue and red team that's sticking out of my head. Thank you. But and he was one of the marquee guys that came in. JP Jordan is a guy that came out of college. Brandon
Mhm.
McManus is another Louisville guy.
Yeah.
But you've got people that really just come from all different sectors of this game.
Exactly.
Um, and it just creates this kind of team that has been impactful in League One, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's been, it's crazy. Guys have, we've like Solo, we say in our locker room, you best USL championship player ever. He was a, two-time MVP.
Right.
Um, and he 20 goals, 20 assists in one season, only player to ever do that. But so to have, him in our locker room, very decorated player, then, have me, someone who's, not even ever been to college and, guys from all around, it's definitely different, I'd say, in this league, but I think it's kind of we have a good mix of, personalities and then a good mix of, youthful players who, and, in my opinion, I think kind of the younger guys kind of play more free than some of the older guys. And I
Hmm.
think we have a good mix of, more of the established pro who's, been in this league, been around the league for a long time, and then guys who are coming in, trying to prove themselves. I think, yeah, it's worked out.
Right. So you mentioned some of the younger guys play a little bit more freely. Do you feel the same way about your game?
Yeah, I think so for sure. It's definitely when I'm playing right back. You find yourself in more, quick pace scenarios and
Yeah.
quicker thinking stuff. At center back, you have to try to be mature when you're playing center back. It's a position that can cost the team if you do something dumb. But
Mhm.
right back, I'd say so. Yeah, you kind of just I feel like you play the best when you're not thinking really and you're kind of just enjoying it. You're out there having fun, and I'd say at right back, I try to play more freely.
And it's a position that merits that too
Yeah.
because of you mentioned um, a bit of what you can actually do with the ball in terms of being able to spray. You could spray a ball to the opposite end of the field and into
Mhm.
the opposite corner, and that creates a new opportunity. But there's also just so much open space that you're able to work with because you
Yeah.
don't quite have, attacking midfielders that are looking to come play a one-on-one balls with the outside
Mhm.
backs. So
Yeah.
it's something that you have the ability to break lines and to work things through a little bit more. And
Yeah.
I mean, Texoma has certainly utilized that too. You um, when you start gaining those reps at that right back position and more of those minutes and more of those passes are being expected to you, ultimately looking to be successful, how do you adjust it? I mean, do the factors of or the thoughts of I've never played a professional season before, or I've never this, or I've never gone to con are those things that are even in your mind, or you're just getting the zone when you're playing that game?
Yeah, I think it's natural for everyone to be nervous and kind of not in their head, but thinking about things before the game. But
Mhm.
once you kind of touch the ball, make that first pass, you're in it, and kind of all that thought goes out your head. But I think just for me early on, especially just trying to I tell myself to I try to of course listen to guys around me, and a big part was proving to myself that I'm good enough in this league and good enough to play here. So, just going out and competing. I think just if you're willing to work hard and run and make tackles, especially being in the back line. If if you're losing the ball some or going long maybe too much, but you're doing your job defensively, everyone there's nothing really much to say. So
Phew.
yeah.
Yeah, perfect. And I mean, I guess on that same note of, maybe this mental, thing maybe being, an inhibitor sometimes for certain teams or certain players in the longer term. I mean, what I thought was really nice for the turn, I think, of this Texoma team and a confidence booster was that first win of the season against Union Omaha.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll look even just at some of the numbers now, 62% on ball percentage for Omaha, going back to the note of why possession doesn't really matter in this particular league, but that was a
Mhm.
home win for you guys as well.
Yeah.
First set of 3 points, first home win for the organization. Did anything feel differently? And you maybe walk us through whatever you remember from the game or whatever from after the match that you'd be able to tell us. Um, what kind of a moment that really was for a pro team.
Yeah, it was, obviously a great experience. We were, I don't know what game in the season I was in, but maybe eight. But we were decently into the season. We have, didn't have, I think we had maybe 2 points from two ties, and just in a kind of in a hole, struggling, especially being a new team and trying to gel all together. That definitely played a factor. And yeah, that first Omaha game, just in the locker room. Um, at that point in time, everyone knew, what needed to be done. There's kind of, no more talking, just a lot of, at that point in time, after losing those games, guys are trying to talk and just trying to think like, should we do this formation? Should this guy be in? All that stuff that happens. And, at that point it was, okay, time to, screw the talking. Let's just go play. And, really at that point, nothing to lose really. I think we were bottom of the league, if not, right next to it. And, that kind of started that. We had a nice run in the middle of the year, winning a bunch of games, and yeah, it was amazing winning that first game, and the locker room after dancing and celebrating all that stuff's always the stuff that sticks out. So it was fun.
Yeah, huge. And that's an Omaha team that started slow to the
Yeah,
season, but have since picked up and moved into that
yeah,
playoff race. What can you say about this team still very much in the hunt of
yeah.
those last playoff positions? What's the mindset of this organization right now? What does that look like for you guys?
Really just give it your all. It's kind of do or die time right now. So for us to get in the playoffs, just kind of similar to how that Omaha game was no more talking. For example, after we played well against Portland last week. Still
Mhm.
lost 1-0, but I mean we had good chances to score, and it was probably one of our better games as a team. This season, and we still ended up losing 1-0. But well, which wouldn't be a terrible result. If any other you're not trying to fight for a playoff spot early in the season, that losing 1-0 against a good team, in a place like Portland, it's not a bad result. But
Mhm.
in other games we lose. This year, Forbes comes in and we have a whole team talk and kind of dissect what happened. And this time he didn't even talk. We didn't say anything because everyone knows exactly what needs to happen. And I think it's just important we go in this weekend. Just everyone's focused and ready to go, ready to work. You just run for your teammates and go into tackles hard. And yeah, I'm confident we'll win.
I mean, it's, there just comes a point where you guys just have to continue to, keep your head down and those results will come. I mean,
Yeah,
like you talked about, the game against Portland, I thought was a fantastic effort on your guys' team, just not being
yeah,
able to come away with the points there, but
yeah,
still very, very much a lot to look for this
yeah,
team.
yeah, for sure.
Now, I guess I'll move into a little bit of a sector in terms of kinds of questions that are a little bit more open-ended.
Yeah.
Like I said before, there were a lot of the guys that, do end up going that college route,
Mhm.
or other guys like yourself who go take that leap of faith. Guys like Patrick too. I mean,
Yeah,
16, 17-year-old kid. And he's learning under guys like you and Angelo and the rest of this defensive unit. But um, you know, when you first put pen to paper on that contract and you start going through these trials and maybe there's doubt that's keeping you in a tug between maybe putting a full 100% in or backing out and maybe finding some kind of whatever it may have been. What
yeah.
keeps you consistent and keeping your head down? Is there a certain other external or intrinsic motivation that you've got?
Really just, for me personally, I've spent a lot of time, especially I'd say kind of starting sixth grade, seventh grade, and middle school. Spending a lot of time, every day playing a lot of soccer, working out, and I feel like just kind of I owe it to myself to a certain extent for how much I've worked and how much hours and time and stress I've put on my body, to go for it. I think I look in my life and if I'm when I'm older and if I look back and if I never really gave trying to play professional a full shot, to be something would regret. If I foregone it and went to college and then maybe dabbled after college and that was it. I think I'd regret it. And you can always go to college. You can be mid 20s and go get your degree. And so I think might as well try soccer now. And if it doesn't work, you can always go to college as a student. But yeah, I mean it's another little story. My grandfather played baseball growing up, and he was drafted to the MLB, and he decided to turn it down in high school and go to A&M because he was like big time pitcher coming out of Texas and played baseball at A&M and didn't get drafted after college. And he always told my brother plays baseball as well, but he'd always tell my brother and I kind of that was the one decision he wished in his life he could have back. And,
Mm.
just hearing that and, that's always stuck with me. So you got to go for it at times. So yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think your life up to this point has just been about taking those opportunities when they come,
Yeah.
and I mean, frankly, I'm excited to see what the rest of this season looks like for you, AV Alta, Richmond, Knox,
Mhm.
and Tormenta coming up. I mean, it'll be big for this team, but yeah, it'll be a great look moving forward. But
Yeah.
I knew I do want to ask just last couple pieces about maybe what the overall environment with Texoma has been for you. Outside of coaching, outside of the playing aspect, how have you as a person adjusted to this kind of organization and the support you've been able to have, the conversations you've been able to have with teammates and just being around, being on your own as an adult per se.
Yeah. 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 I've enjoyed it. I love the guys, the group on the team. So maybe I'm lucky. I don't know how it is at other clubs, but yeah, some of my best friends in life have come from this team. So yeah, I love spending time with those guys and like you said, great supporting cast in terms of our coaching, our staff, and the owners believe in us and are willing to do the extra little thing to help the team out. So yeah, I've really enjoyed it. It's been the time is it's kind of flown by the season. It feels like days are long, but weeks are super short, and
Hmm.
kind of the whole week is geared towards that game on that weekend. And so yeah, everyone's trainings for that, and everyone's kind of focused on that. And once we play that game, then it's same thing again. So those days and those trainings and all the hours after trainings are kind of long, but the weeks go by very fast.
Yeah, interesting. I'll ask too. I mean, I remember your profile card coming up on the socials because
Mhm.
I believe it was Ruben who actually sent me a shirt from Texoma, and
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, I've gotten to do just a couple little promotions for you guys, and it's been nice just getting the word and watching from afar. Too. There's only so much I could do in upstate New York,
yeah, of course, yeah,
um, so but it's still been lovely to see, and I still keep up with all the socials, and I remember your card coming up, and it's been a food that I've fallen in love with recently, but sushi has been something that you've taken a liking to for a while. Like
yeah, yeah.
what has been your spot to go to from down here, just so when I know when I'm coming down to a game, we'll go meet up somewhere and we'll go have a nice time.
They're a good spot in Dallas. Oishi actually went there last night. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm lucky
okay.
to be in, I'm lucky to be from Dallas on those those off days or when we have time I can always go into Dallas and see my friends if they're there but see family. And
Nice.
yesterday I was in Dallas with my dad and we went to that Oishi place. It's right by SMU, the campus.
Okay.
So I recommend that for sure.
So how far away is the Texoma facility and the home stadium from SMU in Dallas? I know you guys have played some friendlies before you mentioned.
it's about like 50 minutes, just as long as you're not going on, rush hour and stuff. But yeah, it's not terrible.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I asked because um, it's interesting too because I've seen Wisconsin play games against Forward Madison for preseason
Yeah.
friendlies, and that's becoming something that's more popular with these ACC and the Big Ten schools against
Mhm.
League One organizations.
Yeah.
Um, Now, I might be stirring some, I might be stirring the pot by saying this, but do you think there's any college program that could beat Texoma right now?
No, I don't. I don't think so. We've actually talked about that before a few weeks ago because
Really?
we tied SMU 0-0. But our team is so much different now. I think those are our first few games ever. We've been together for a couple weeks, and you're getting thrown to go play those guys, and
Hmm.
I think um, yeah, I think I'd be very confident that we take care of business now. But yeah, I think our team's just much different than what it was at the start of the year, and I think the even in League One, the scores kind of reflect it. We were not doing well. We were losing games, a lot to little, and we had to just find our identity. I think um, formation stuff and
Hmm.
personnel where players are playing, and that was all stuff you just kind of have to learn, which is natural.
Right.
And yeah, I think we take care of any college team.
Huge. Yeah, no, I mean, that's yeah, it's something the more that I've watched these two leagues, it's something that I think about more and more. But how could you expect exactly like you're saying, how could you expect a team to go in and thrown together after a few weeks, whereas you've got these SMU got when you guys are playing them during the spring season, so
Yeah, yeah,
they're coming off of an entire fall, a winter where
right,
they're still training. So that's
yeah,
it's something that's understandable. I mean selfishly I want to see it as much as possible, but you've got to
yeah,
see both teams in full force. It's just
yeah, yeah,
you can't uh, it's like comparing apples to oranges and the kind of state that you guys are playing.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but yeah, it's very interesting to see. I think it's something that I mean, the U.S. Soccer Federation has always talked about making college professional league and figuring that out and where that lines up
yeah,
relative to the pro outlook. And I think then these two being the closest, it makes people think about this kind of question. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad that the professionals are playing at a higher level than college, if that makes sense, because
yeah, of course.
it just gives more credibility to the level here in the U.S.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think USL one. People ask me at times, the whole college thing, and if you look around the league for, I'd say majority, if the guys went to college, because there's, for example, Solo, played pro in Africa and almost actually went to the EPL. Big time player, played like
Right.
70 games for Ghana's national team. Played with Essie and all those guys. And so there's some like really accomplished players who've played professionally for a long time. But even the guys who come out of college are the best guys. They were the guy, and now they're here. And so, and I think some people think like maybe they could go if they played college, but the best guy on the best team for the most part is now in this league. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think the level is a lot higher than it's on TV. The games look very fast paced, and that's how they are. But that's just kind of the style of the league, like you mentioned earlier on the whole possession thing. It's like kind of in this league, the team who has most possession loses the game for the most part because
Mhm.
it's hard to break those low blocks, especially when they're very organized. And if it's a back four and a five in the middle, it's very hard to break those down. And what ends up happening is the team trying to break it down sends a lot of numbers forward, and then if there's a turnover, there's the counter, and you get scored on, and that's just kind of how this league goes.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, there's just not quite the it's hard to be able to get, I mean, in any league, but it's hard to go back in transition when you're taking when you're losing possession that far
yeah,
on your own end. It's
yeah,
difficult to recover from. Yeah, no,
yeah.
it's very interesting.
Hmm.
All right, Reed. Like we had talked about, I really appreciate you wanting to come on and give us your thoughts on this first pro environment for you guys, what Texomas look like, this environment, a little bit of a personal discussion about college into the pro game, I mean, I think you've made the right decision, partly because I get to watch you and, your name now comes to mind a little bit earlier for me. But yeah, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate your time, but that being said, I do want to leave you the last word in the interview if you've got anything that's on your mind, anything you want to talk about, Texoma, your family, Dallas, this, that, or the otherwise. But again, I appreciate your time and I'm looking forward to the rest of the year.
Yeah, thank you. I just, I appreciate you having me on here. It's been good. Watch go watch the next 4 games for Texoma. Hopefully we pull through and are able to get in the playoffs. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
All right, very nice then. Reed, we'll
Perfect.
talk soon. Best luck on the rest of the
Yeah.
games.
Thank you. Thank you.